Ever wonder why getting your car towed costs so much? Or what the insurance companies don't want you to know after a crash? I spent 35 years in the towing industry, 15 of those building and running companies, and now that I'm out of the game, I've got nothing to hide. I'm giving you the insider advice you need with zero conflict of interest. Be warned though, the stories get raw, just like some of the crash scenes I've been to. I've never been everyone's cup of tea, which is fine by me. I drink coffee anyway. Grab a mug and listen up. You're on the hook with Aussie Tow Talk. How you going, guys? Welcome to another episode of Aussie Tow Talk. And today we're going to be concentrating on breakdowns. Now, the only thing worse than having your car break down is having your car break down in the middle of nowhere. And it can be a real problem getting the help you need when your vehicle gives up the ghost and you're like miles from home. So in this episode, we're going to concentrate on who provides the best out of area service and the best value for money when it comes to buying a road assistance plan. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm going to ruffle a few feathers with this one, but I don't really give a shit. I'm only going to be concentrating on the states and territories that I have towed in, and will review each service provider I've worked with. Okay, so and I'm going to do that with a 1 to 10 rating, with 10 being the best. Bit of a spoiler alert though, one of these providers that I've worked with are going to get a -1, and that's just based on my experience with them. So now, this episode in no way reflects on any individual person that may have or still works for these companies. In fact, nearly all of the call centre people I've dealt with are fantastic to deal with, and given the nature of their jobs, it's quite a surprise. So, like anything though, there are arseholes everywhere, and I've had my fair share of them, and this is usually reserved to the executive teams who actually run the show. So, my goal has never wavered though. My primary concern has always been the person or the people who have always needed that assistance. So now, firstly, we're going to start off with the RACQ, and I actually found them pretty good, right? Now, they've got a range of plans to choose from, which kind of can be confusing, as you can see in the picture here. They've got a lot of plans to choose from, but their prices based on coverage is not too shabby. So at the time of the recording, prices started at around $80 a year and top out at $310 per year for light vehicles, and you can see there's a $464 per year for RVs. So the pricing structure is pretty clear cut, and that does make it easy to select, what's going to work for you. Now, when you break down, so when you're more than 100 k's from home, okay, which is what we're talking about today, they'll usually get quoted prices from many of its contractors. They're not always going to choose the cheapest either, which is good, and that I have had experience with the RACQ. So they'll usually go for the one which is most convenient for the member. So in addition, they also have their own trucks, and they'll use them, in certain circumstances. Okay, and you can see here again, just outlining all the plans and what they do and how they do it and so forth. So the pros with the RACQ, look, clear pricing, and it's tailored for just about any budget. They have a wide range of services that can assist anybody really from one phone call. The call centre staff are always great, and they've got a huge contractor network. There's a lot to choose from, and we're going into the cons now. So, while it's a pro, they can tailor it to any budget. The terms and conditions of each plan can be damn confusing, and that could put people off. They have a PDS for every plan, which again can be very confusing. Where I've found most providers have a general PDS with additions written in layman's terms. Nonetheless though, based on this, I'm going to give these guys pretty much an 8 out of 10, which I think is pretty good. The next one we're going to move on to is Digicall Assist. Now, Digicall Assist it doesn't sell roadside assistance policies direct to individuals. They operate exclusively as a business-to-business provider, operating call centres and dispatch networks for all major insurance brands, so like GIO and Real Insurance, vehicle manufacturers and fleet companies. Now, because they manage the operations for these brands, prices and plans may vary depending on who you partner with. Okay, but having said that, their prices are actually pretty good, and they do look after their members. If you've signed up for one of these plans, so your entry level cover is around $70 to $90 a year, and just covers basic roadside fixes like flat batteries, minor towing, maybe a tyre change. Okay, you've got a standard cover which will go somewhere between $90 and $130 a year. And then you've got a comprehensive premium cover that can range anywhere from $100 to $300 per year. So this actually gives you extensive towing limits, accommodation assistance, things like locksmith, key replacement limits up to $250, etc. Okay, so they're not too bad. You can generally get Digital Assist through your insurance, believe it or not. So you've got GIO Road Assist and Real Insurance, PD Insurance, people through that, and even automotive manufacturers like Chrysler. Okay, where they fall down, and this is a real problem I think for them, is that you can't join their program directly as a member of the public, a member of the public. Blah blah blah. So you need to go through somebody like I've mentioned before. So the pros, look, I've worked with Digital Assist, and they have great customer service. The contractor portal is second to none. It makes it so easy for us because we do everything in their portal, including invoicing, and that just makes things so much easier for us, which allows us to give you, the consumer, a better service. They will go out of their way for their customers and their contractors, and they're fully independent from other roadside assistant companies, so they're a standalone. The cons, again, I mentioned this before, not available to the general public directly other than through a repair partner. And there's a little bit of a lack of information on their website, which I found, was, it's that they could put more on there, and that's just my personal opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments if you go onto their website and have a squiz. There's no real direction on who their partners are, so I had to do quite a bit of research to find out who their partners are. So it'd be great if they have a more concise, detailed list of providers that they deal with. But nonetheless, based on what I've experienced with them, I'll still give them a 7 out of 10. They're pretty damn good. Then we've got another one here, 24/7. I only did a little bit of work for these guys, and they're not somebody that you would class as being in the mainstream. However, the work I did, they still provided a great service. Their prices are pretty much on par. They're not too bad when you're paying annually, and it does cover a great deal when you're up at the top of the plan. Because I didn't do a great deal of work for these guys, I'm not actually going to give them a rating. But you know what? One thing I will say is that, hey, give them a crack anyway, because the experience I had with them, although minimal, was pretty damn good. Now we're going to move on to the NRMA. Now, over the years, I've done a lot of work for the NRMA. Even when I was working in Victoria, we'd get premium care work for travellers who had mechanical issues, while they were out of town. Now, the great thing about the NRMA is they keep it super simple. They look after their contractors, and when the job is complete, payment can be expected within 2 weeks, which is great for smaller towing companies because it keeps our cash flow going. Right? They've also got some simple plans for young drivers, which have their limitations but are good enough to get you out of trouble. And that will be in the next picture here, which is, of course, the free to go. Okay, very, very basic coverage, but it's enough to get you out of trouble. We go back to the main picture here, and you can see their plans are actually pretty good and one of the cheapest when you compare them to all the other major companies. They're not too bad, okay. They start around $105 a year, top out at about $248 per year, but this is not including the add-ons, okay. And so the add-ons are pretty much down here, and you can see what you're entitled to when you get the add-ons and the member benefits and so forth. All right, and again, we'll go down here to the free to go, which is great. An interesting point actually is that this was the only roadside assistance company I found to have something specifically for young people. So and they've had this free to go cover for quite some time. So I find that pretty bloody good. So the pros, look, great all-round service, great pricing. In fact, one of the cheapest, and it's a clear-cut repair network. Really, there's nothing you need to do, or there's nothing they won't do to keep the member happy. So, and I've found that through my personal experience. The cons, look, I don't really have anything negative to say about the NRMA. As a contractor, I was pretty much looked after too, and every member I spoke to really sung their praises. So I'm happily going to give them a 10 out of 10. So our fourth and final one is the RACV. And I'm going to be open and honest here. I haven't had great experiences with them. Again, the people in the call centre that I've dealt with have been exceptional, but the executive team really do need a checkup from the neck up. There's no two ways about it. So we'll go through some of the stuff that I've got here, right? And this is including Club Assist, and some of the people I dealt with Club Assist from the executive team downwards were yeah, anyway, I'm not going to mention it on this program. So when I moved down to Victoria in 2017, I had a job as a contractor with the RACV, and I was in country Victoria, and I got to say, I've never contracted to a bigger set of arseholes than this lot. And again, I'm not going to single out the call centre team. As I mentioned earlier, they were always great. But the executive team, man, they need some serious attitude adjustment when it comes to liaising with their contractors. Further to that, I'd never dealt with Club Assist either, right? And I'm be pretty happy if I never dealt with them again. The team in place for the area that we had, that I dealt with, were arrogant, demanding, and had a general poor attitude towards our roadside patrols, even when one of them got assaulted. And that's probably the nicest thing I'll have to say about them. Moving back to the RACV, I can tell you they have their own issues. While their member plans are pretty easy to read, as you can see here, and they're not badly priced, it's when you go through the PDS and get to the list of how things cannot be covered for mechanical failure. Put that together with what I've witnessed as a contractor, and you can get the feel of the opinion that's about to flow. So, for instance, if your wheel studs snap off and the wheel falls off your car, right, and the car hits the ground, the RACV class that as an impact, right? So they won't cover you under your roadside assistance. They'll tell you to lodge an insurance claim, and if you're not insured, you'll potentially be up for the accident tow rates. Now, I've gone to a few of these, and I've flatly refused, to charge somebody accident tow rates for a wheel that's come off due to a mechanical failure, because that's pretty much what it is. Wheel studs snap all the time, hubs come off. And some of the older cars, you've got a ball joint that might go, all right, and your car's going to hit the ground. So I'm not going to charge somebody, because I class that as a mechanical failure, right? You haven't hit anything. The only reason your vehicle's hit the ground in the first place is because the fucking wheel fell off, right? So it's a mechanical failure. It is stemmed from a mechanical failure. And that's how I've always looked at it, but not these guys. Right. Oddly enough, though, if you have a fire in your engine bay, and as long as it stays contained in the engine bay, the RACV will cover benefits for you under the roadside assistance plan you're on. Now, I don't know about you, but if I have a fire in my engine bay, I'm going to lodge an insurance claim, because the car is pretty much going to be totaled in most cases. Now, I had a job it came through as a breakdown, where the engine bay was totally gutted, and the owner was not insured. And I asked the question, hey, look, if you're insured, would you make a claim? And obviously they said, of course we would. Okay. So I pretty much told the RACV to mind their own business. And that night I ended up towing the car home for free. And they lived locally, which made it easier. I was going to say make it worse, but no, it made it easier. I'm not going to charge these guys an insurance fee when they're not insured, but I'm not going to let them be railroaded by a misguided bloody roadside service whose PDS is completely out of whack. And to elaborate, when you look at something like an engine fire, okay, if you lodge an insurance claim, 9 times out of 10 the insurance company's going to write that car off, because once that fire starts eating through your wiring, it's gone. And for a late model car, your engine management system's gone, all your electrics are gone. There's just no point. It is a total loss, regardless if it's been contained to the engine bay or not. Now, there's another couple of jobs that I actually attended with them, which I felt that the RACV felt really short, right? So, and this is stuff that I have actually witnessed from jobs that I've attended, so I'm not really talking out of my arse here. So I got a call one night on the Calder Freeway at Macedon, in the Macedon Ranges, and it was about 9 o'clock at night, and we had to do a tow to safety, which is a common thing, right? So we'll do a tow to safety, we'll put the car in a safe place, and then we'll let the RACV know where the car is, and they'll send out a patrol. So once I got there, though, I found a woman with a 6-month-old on their own. Now, I couldn't take the infant in the truck. I called the RACV and said, hey, look, this is what I've got. Can you organise a taxi? But because she was only on the basic plan, they wouldn't send one out because it wasn't part of the coverage. I mean, seriously, fuck the coverage. It's a mum and her infant standing on a freeway or stranded on a freeway at night, and they need to be moved to a safe place. Now, to be fair, the lady who I was on the phone with understood everything, but when she went to a supervisor, they denied it. And I just don't get that. I just don't understand why any roadside service would do that, regardless of what plan you're on, right? I ended up organising the cab myself. I paid for it, and I towed a car home for nothing, which was around 25 Ks. There are times when it's not just about plans or money or anything like that. There are times when it's just about doing the right thing, okay? But this wasn't isolated. There was another night, again, called a freeway, this time at Gisborne, around 11:30 at night, and it was a woman on her own. And a patrol had been, right, and this is very odd because usually car on the freeway, as I mentioned earlier, they will call for a tow to safety, right? But no, they sent a patrol, deemed the car needed a tow, and left her there until I arrived. Now, I didn't know she was on her own, and I got there about 50 minutes later. It was a busy night, and her car couldn't be fixed on the roadside. So it was directed to go to the nearest RACV depot, which was about 5 Ks from where we were. And so she had a chat to me. She lived about 25 kilometres up the road in Kyneton, and there was another RACV depot there, and she was only on the basic plan. And she asked the RACV if she could take the car there instead because it'd be close to her home. And they said, well, sure, but you'll have to pay for the tow. So when she said, when she asked me the same problem again, I said, no dramas. Again, there are times where, it's not about the bottom line. There are times that you just need to do the right thing for these people. And the two things I'm trying to point out here, members are your lifeblood. They're your bread and butter, especially when it comes to getting that repeat business, and if anybody's sort of listening to this that works for the RACV, maybe you want to take some notes, okay? Putting the safety of like an infant or leaving a woman on the side of the freeway late at night is completely unacceptable, and never in all my years have I encountered a service provider that has said to me, no, it's not covered in their plan. Basically, we don't give two shits about the safety. I've never encountered that from any service provider whatsoever. So, for these reasons, it's coming, right? It's the -1. That's what I give them. Because the experiences that I had with them were not pleasant, and the experiences that I personally witnessed being passed on to their members were not pleasant. And they were just two examples. I remember going to a big meeting with them one day. We had a big contractor meeting, and one of the towing contractors brought up a really valid point that was just pretty much laughed off, and it was a safety concern. So the -1 stands. But I'm interested to know if you guys have had a good experience or a bad experience with a service provider. And that includes any towies as well. I'd be keen to hear, right? Because I know that, hey, again, like I said in my previous podcast that I put up not too long ago, we're not saints either. Like, we get it wrong too. But I'll be interested to hear any comments that you guys might have, okay? But just before I close, it's important to note that this is what I have experienced personally over the years, and these are my own thoughts of the providers. Okay. Regardless of whether you've had a good or bad experience yourself, drop a comment in. I'd love to hear it. Share your thoughts. And that'd be really cool. So, look, thanks for watching today. There is another episode coming up soon. I'm just in the midst of recording and editing it. So, yeah. Hey, it's a Monday and a public holiday. I'm a bit tongue-tied. In the meantime, as always, be safe. There'll be links to each provider I've mentioned in the description. Check them out, and I'll see you next time.